think a lot of people, especially in Cape Town, might not understand what's going on in KwaZulu-Natal when it comes to keeping the sharks away from the waters that people are swimming in.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's been such an uproar in the last couple of years about Australia's decisions to cull sharks because of bather safety, and the reality is that we've been doing that for several decades on the KwaZulu-Natal south coasts. Shark nets are perceived to be barriers for sharks to not enter swimming beaches, which is completely wrong. The shark nets are in fact fishing nets to fish out the number of sharks in the region. They're not barriers. So to begin with, the nets were staggered. So you would have one net here, one net there, one net there, one net there. So as sharks are approaching the beach, they get entangled. Oftentimes, one would see that the sharks actually got entangled leaving the beach area. So you're not actually protecting bathers, you're just creating an impact on that ecosystem and taking away sharks. When the shark nets were put in KZN, it was during a time when we still had whaling in South Africa. So the prevalence of sharks coming inshore was very high because of actual whale carcasses getting pulled up the beaches. We don't do that anymore. We know about the decimation of shark numbers internationally. It's a time to think differently around that. Unfortunately, one of the things that recently was adopted in KZN with the shark culling, as we now know it is that we have shark nets and drum lines. And drum lines are actual buoys with baited hooks to actually catch the sharks. The problem with that is you'll have a small shark that lives in the region who'll bite the baited hook. Now suddenly you've got an animal that large fighting for its life on a hook, which brings in a bigger shark. So suddenly you have tiger sharks, for example, that wouldn't come into that region, and now they're coming into that region and getting caught on hooks. And these are all sharks that are on protected lists. So we really can step up our efforts to protect our sharks by, for example, looking at ways to replace the nets in KZN with something less harmful.
I know that KZN announced last year they were going to try and install that electronic cable. I haven't heard any updates on that. Do you know what's happened?
Yeah, they've been looking at alternatives now for a couple of years, and for that I really, really respect that decision. And I know that there are a lot of leaders within Natal Shark Sport who are looking at ways to change the system they have. Again, public perception is a huge driver for the nets to stay in the water. You know, even though Natal Shark Sport could know that it's time to get the nets out the water, public perception says, what? You're going to take the nets out? We're all going to die. So they've been looking at these non-invasive ways, like, for example, the electric barrier. I know that somebody from Shark Sport was down here in Cape Town the last couple of months to test it. Unfortunately, our sharks didn't really play ball and they weren't in the region, so they couldn't actually test the interaction with the sharks. So it's a very slow process, partly because of public perception, which is why I think the awareness raising is so important, that the public can understand that there's more to it than just bather safety. There's also the importance of the ecosystem.
Now, what are your opinions on shark cage diving?
Oh, well, that's a can of worms. Shark cage, shall I go?
Yeah, you can go.
Peter's like, take this one.
I know. Shark cage diving is a contentious one. I think, like any activity where we use nature as a resource, it needs to be done well. It needs to be done properly and with respect of the animals. And a profit-driving business making money off the environment should give back actively. There are several shark cage diving operators in South Africa who practice by these codes, that they run very respectful, well-managed operations and give back a lot to research, to conservation, to awareness. And there are some that don't. Those ones I like less. The ones who are doing it the right way and giving back, great. They are also educating people about great white sharks and sharing a lot of information about the sharks. And I've spoken to so many people who have had no experience of sharks, gone on a dive and come back and thought, I was going to be petrified, I thought it was going to be terrible, but it was just amazing. They're beautiful, they're majestic. So there is definitely a positive impact happening there on the people who experience it, but it has to be done the right way. Whether or not it affects attacks on humans,
well, this
has
is my next
not
question.
Been proven. You should have a chat with Dr. Alison Cox sometime if you can from Shark Spotters. She's done a lot of really, really interesting research on the behavior of great whites in False Bay and whether or not baiting actually affects their behavior. And her conclusions are that these animals are so much more intelligent than we give them credit for. Having chum in the water around a cage and then having divers in the cage, the sharks are much more intelligent than that. Diver, cage, chum, oh, food. Humans are food. There's a lot more going on than that in their behavior, in their everything. Also, we still have fisheries in False Bay, in Gansbaai, all along our coastline. When the fishing boats come into Kalk Bay Harbour from a successful day out fishing, them cleaning their fish, you always see like loads of birds above the boats as they come in. They're putting more in the water than the shark boats do in months. So, I mean, we are putting chum in the water even by fishing. That doesn't mean that's affecting attacks. So there's a lot more going on in the ecosystem than just the chumming of the water. So I think, again, it's one of those things that I would encourage people to get educated about. On Shark Spotters page, there's really interesting resources around what affects great whites behavior, and the research that they're doing on our great white behavior is, it's groundbreaking and internationally acclaimed.